And I feel like maybe I've engaged in this conversation and had like a controversial take compared to some fans. But I'd be interested in asking you if you think that Brandon Aiyuk is a top 5 receiver in the league right now. And then
I wouldn't say he's top 5 right now. And
top
that's
10.
not a. I would probably say he's a top 10 receiver. I wouldn't say top 5 because top 5 receivers, like the NFL has a lot of really good receivers. Like off the top of
Yeah.
my head, I'm taking Jamar Chase, Devontae Adams. I'm taking Stephon Diggs, Justin Jefferson. Those are just off the top of my head, and I'm not really thinking of like receiver wise. Like I'm just kind of just trying to just fly off the top of my head of names that come to mind. Tyreek Hill. I didn't even say Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
So like that's just 5 off the top of my head that I would take any day of the week over
Brandon Aiyuk.
Brandon
I
Aiyuk.
think
Unfortunately,
I think that Ayuk is a really good is an excellent player. I think his where he shines is kind of in his consistency to like in his consistency. I think he's consistently really good. I do understand the criticism that sometimes it feels like his drops are like kind of how we're talking about Brock Purdy, like his mistakes are in the most important moments. I feel like in the moments where you're like, if Brandon Ayuk were to have made that catch, it would have been like legendary. Those are kind of the times that he fails to live up to the moment, which can be a little bit frustrating as a fan who's been like wanting him to take that next step within his game and really like show out. I've been a little bit frustrated with this. We were kind of talking about the offense and its creativity, lack of creativity potentially. And when we're talking about Brandon Aiyuk, some criticism that he has, even though he's on pace for 1,400 yards, which is an excellent amount of yards. Last year, he was super proud of his season and he barely got to 1,000 yards. So getting on pace for 14 is really good. Now, he does only have 2 touchdowns, but he only has 2 red zone targets. I feel like that's super important. He can't throw himself the ball within the red zone. So he's caught every ball that he's been targeted in the red zone and then immediately scored with it. So that's very good. But when we were talking about kind of criticizing Kyle Shanahan, I thought it would be interesting. I wanted to read these off to you.
I'm
I
sorry. I'm sorry. I'm laughing.
yeah.
Laughing at you. I'm laughing at.
Oh, you. I know that you're saying something interesting right now, and you went. You
I,
went.
I'm laughing because the comment came up because of on Jesse Naylor's show. Obviously,
Yeah. Do you want to explain
Larry.
to everyone what happened?
So Larry Kruger, someone asked a
I agree,
question
Hector.
in the chat on Jesse Naylor's show with Larry Kruger and Vish, and essentially the question was is Brandon Aiyuk a top receiver? And Vish explained how he thinks he's having a phenomenal, like a really good season. Like he's on pace for 1,400 yards. He's averaging XYZ, like most yards per route run and stuff like that. Second and or most average depth of target. So like he's explaining a lot of good points. And Larry Kruger's whole purpose of this was, well, in August, I thought that he was going to have 12 to 16 touchdowns during the season, and he's not even on pace to do that. So he's having a bad year, a mediocre year. I'm like, how does someone have a mediocre year just because they have 2 touchdowns? Like that has nothing to do. So that's why I'm laughing because I thought it was a funny argument. Like I thought it was so funny. Like you can't like this. We're halfway through the season. He could go on a crazy run and end up having 8 to 10 touchdowns. Like we don't know what the rest of the season is going to hold. So like the fact that that was his sole argument on why he's not having a good season to me was wild. 1,400 yards did not matter. So for example, a player could have 200 receiving yards, right? They could have and
Crazy.
this is how I thought. Like,
It's
wait,
been
okay, so
insane.
a player could have 200 yards and have 8 touchdowns and it's going to be a phenomenal season because they have 8 touchdowns. Like to me, that's not how it works. That just means that dude got targeted in the red zone a shit ton. Like
Yeah.
so for me, that's where I was like, what the? All right, I guess. Like if that's so to me, that's why I was laughing. But I'll let you go ahead and keep explaining because it was funny, like the funny argument, and then he called Vish out, like which wasn't cool, but to each their
I
own.
can I can understand. Like I also anticipated the Brock Purdy that Brendan Ayuk would have more touchdowns, but that's on Brock Purdy, that's on Kyle Shanahan. And that's kind of like my question, do the 49ers need to distribute the ball within the red zone more? This season, passing wise, Christian McCaffrey has 4 touchdowns with 7 red zone targets. Kittle has 3 uh, passing touchdowns in the red zone with 7 targets. Brandon Aiyuk has 2 touchdowns with 2 targets. Juice has 1. Ronnie Bell has 1 with 1 target. And Deebo has 1 passing touchdown with 5 red zone targets. So first of all, Deebo, that's a disappointing stat for him because he's been targeted 5 times and only scored 1 touchdown. And they are getting him the ball a lot. But yeah, I mean, Brandon Aiyuk only got the ball within the red zone twice, and he scored both times, so he can't throw himself the ball. I can be disappointed that he doesn't have more touchdowns, but also realize that that's not on him. He needs to have you have to have opportunities in order to take advantage of them. Do you think that that's something that needs to change, or do you think it's okay because Christian McCaffrey is? I mean, he's breaking records with the amount of touchdowns that he has, and his targets. Outside of just passing, but also being handed off the ball. I mean, he's like far out away has more opportunities to score touchdowns than anyone in the league right now. So
I think they should force feed the ball to Brandon Aiyuk in the red zone. And when I mean this is like, so we've seen Brandon Aiyuk made spectacular catches, right? Like we've seen him do that. He could win 50-50 catches. Why aren't we throwing him a fade, a goal line slant? Like he's phenomenal at both of those, but we're not doing it. To me, I'm like, okay, why not? Like, what's the purpose of not targeting Brandon Aiyuk in these key situations? Because to me, I think Brandon Aiyuk is more than capable of doing that. Yet we're using Christian McCaffrey, almost like it feels like almost every play in the red zone. And for me, if you start targeting Brandon Aiyuk more, I guarantee you those touchdowns go up. Like it's common sense. Like it's not rocket science. Brandon Aiyuk is that good of a player. In my opinion, I think he's a top 10 receiver in the NFL right now. He's you could ask corners in the league and they're going to tell you he's playing at a top 10 level. Like that's how good he is. So the fact that it was because of touchdowns, like to me, that made no sense. I don't think touchdowns dictate how good a player is doing. For example, how many times did Julio Jones score? I believe he went 1 year where he had 1 touchdown. Did that make him not a good player that year? Because he had 1 touchdown or 2 touchdowns. There's 1 year Julio Jones had, I think, 2 touchdowns. 1 year he had 3 touchdowns. 1 year in 2017, Julio Jones went for 88 catches, 1,400 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Did that make him a mediocre season? No, he was the best receiver in the league that year, and during a good stretch. So for me, I'm like, at some point you got to just to me, I look at it as sometimes some people want to say things to create drift because it draws attention. Whether it's good publicity or bad publicity, all publicity is good because guess what? Eyes are on the content. So for him,
I feel that. And I think the conversation is fair. Like I said, I currently don't know that I would say that they should pay Brandon Aiyuk, which I know is like super.
You don't think they should?
I don't know.
I thought I had said before they extended
Deebo. Probably because they probably should because their luck in the draft is not good. But I mean, if you look at the younger wide receivers that are coming out, I think that you could find someone who's potentially comparable. I think Brandon Aiyuk will go and shine as a number 1 wide receiver on a different team. But I think with the opportunities that he's given on this team, I just don't know if he's worth the amount of money that he's probably going to get paid.
Teams are gonna hate the 49ers if they let him walk in free agency because I don't think if you obviously have the franchise tag in order to trade him, but if they let him walk and the Kansas City Chiefs sign him, oh my God, that guy's he's gonna be getting targeted left and right. He's gonna have a 1,400 yard season with 10 touchdowns. Like he's gonna go crazy. I originally thought the Niners shouldn't have extended Deebo for what they did, and I thought they should have just waited, traded him, and then kept Brandon Aiyuk as your high paid receiver.
I understand that take, and I part of me agrees, right? Because he's injured and he had that 1 great season. He hasn't gone back to that. I have a bias around Deebo. He's for sure. I feel like my favorite player. I feel like I like his mentality and his physicality. I feel like he's an emotional heartbeat for the team. I don't think it's coincidental that they've seemingly lost their identity with Trent and Deebo out. I think that in 2021, a lot of players talked about like the team goes as Deebo goes. Like Deebo has the ability to like that would be, you know what, last year the team traded for Christian McCaffrey and that changed the season. Deebo has that type of ability within himself.
Yeah.
Like if Deebo decided to go off and be 2021 Deebo right now, the 49ers are winning the Super Bowl because they have other really great players around him as well. I haven't seen that level of play from Brandon Aiyuk yet. And I don't think that means it doesn't exist within him. I think a lot of this goes back to the same as the touchdowns, opportunities. But I feel like within this offense, Deebo has had Deebo's able to shine more, maybe just like scheme or quarterback wise. But yeah, I mean, I'm not saying absolutely don't pay Aiyuk. I think one, just keeping him away from other teams would be very smart. And two, I think as like a pure wide receiver, he's the best wide receiver that the 49ers have. And then three, I don't super trust them to be able to draft someone to take after him. That didn't go so well with Kinlaw. No offense, Kinlaw. So I'm not saying to not pay Aiyuk. I'm just saying I've always been within the Brandon Aiyuk Deebo argument. I've always given Deebo a lot more credit, but I think that could just be a bias on me. I love football players that play the way that he plays when he's playing good, which is part of it, right? Because he's not always playing good. So that's like when he's at his best, he's the best. But how often is he at his best is a good question. And I think that makes sense. And that's probably something they were considering during that contentious going back and forth agreement with his contract that they had. I found it interesting that he signed a shorter contract, right? Because now he needs to, like, for him in his mindset, he needs to be going off this year because then after next year, wouldn't he be up to be paid again? Because wasn't it only a 3-year deal?
No, so
the Niners were smart for that.
Deebo's contract, actually, that was his so right now he's in his, I believe only his first year of his deal, I believe. Or yeah, because he has 2023, 24, and then 25 under contract. So even though he was extended in 2022, it was his fourth year of his rookie deal. So that's why he got extended, and that's why he was able to play and everything. But Brandon Aiyuk still has his 5th-year option, which is I believe at $14 million. But he could ask for a trade. Now, if you ask for a trade, you're probably gonna get a high draft pick back for him. Like I would probably expect the top.
I don't think Aiyuk could ask. He's like a shy guy.
I think he will.
I know he's also like a badass in his head. Like I do get that vibe from him. That I think like what was it last summer when he made like that tweet like 1,000 yards as the 4th option on a run first team or whatever. Which, by the way, that tweet, 4th option on a run first team, introduces my next subject, and this subject also kind of intertwines with the Deebo